What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Pondering Christianity. This week, I wanted to walk you guys through what got me to this point where I have a apologetic channel. This is going to be more so detailing the story of what brought me to apologetics, what brought me into ultimately Christianity. And so I wanted to give you guys that background so you could kind of understand me a little bit better, but also relate. Perhaps you have your own story, your own issues that you're working through currently. And I just want to tell you this story because I do think it helps resonate with people. They've told me that it helps them resonate with the message that I'm trying to get out there. And so with that being said, I am going to walk you guys through my personal testimony today. If you are new here, welcome to the channel. We tackle apologetics here. And also stay towards the end of this video because there is an announcement, an exciting announcement for the channel that I'm wanting to get you guys up on. So let's jump into it this week. So for those of you on this channel who don't know me or perhaps my upbringing, I'm going to give you guys a flyby view. I don't want to disclose all the details per se because some of the people involved in my story are still living today, and if they saw this video, I wouldn't necessarily want these details to result in anyone seeing them badly. So for the sake of disclosure, I'm going to try to not disclose too much incriminating information that might result in someone getting in trouble. Now, that being said, I was raised in a Christian household. My father was a Southern Baptist minister, went to school for theology. My mom was a teacher. Both were raised in strong Christian households. Now, they took me to church. We were at church every Sunday, Sunday night, Wednesday night, did Awana, all the vacation Bible school, all the normal church kid going stuff. But as I grew older, I began to have issues with Christianity, like many do. I had questions begin to develop, and I didn't have answers for those questions. And so I really got to the point where I was disappointed in the general feeling that I had at church where science and religion weren't really allowed to be in the same room together. Now, since then, I've learned that that's just not the reality whatsoever. But nonetheless, that was the culture I was raised in. And I think people, especially in the culture that I was in, were scared of science because they didn't understand science. And therefore, it created this kind of polarization between the two where they felt like they needed to be at odds with one another. And so as I was raised up in this Christian household, my biggest issue with Christianity was partially that I wasn't getting the answers I wanted, but it was also an emotional issue. My father has his shortcomings like any person does, and his particular shortcomings were very prevalent in my life. And in that sense, it created a strong doubt in my belief in his conviction, right? And like, that's one of the biggest things is Ravi Zacharias points out this quote. I can't remember the evangelist who says it, but he says there's 5 gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and the Christian. And most people will never read the first 4. The thing is about that is it is 100% true. My father was the gospel I was paying attention to, and the lifestyle that he was living was legalistic in a sense because of he would do the act on Sundays, but during the weekdays his behavior towards me suggested that what he really felt was something else. That was the piece that began to unhinge my faith in Christianity. Was just this disillusion with who my father was, and here he is supposed to be the leader of the household and a Christian minister with training in theology, and here he was acting the way he was towards me and towards members of my family. And it was a massive obstacle for me and for all of my siblings. We all grew up and moved away, and me specifically, I when I was 17, my father and I started butting heads very, very often. And ultimately, I wanted to get out of there. I was like, I'm going to do what I got to do to get out of here. And so my options were to go to college or join the military. And I didn't want to go to college because of, well, I didn't have any money, and I wasn't wanting to be in the business of borrowing money from my parents, of all people, to go to college. And honestly, I was kind of fed up with school at that time. And so I was just opted into joining the military. And so I had weighed my options, and my brother had asked me to look into the Coast Guard. And I was originally going to join the Army because that's what my brother was in the Army, father was in the Army. And so I was going to join the Army, and ended up joining the Coast Guard instead. And my brother had highly recommended it to me. And, my brother, I very much look up to him. He's kind of like my father figure, if you will. And so his advice was law, more or less. So I ended up joining the Coast Guard. And, one of those things that Christianity tries to put into people's heads sometimes is that there's no good person. You're not going to encounter any good people in the world that aren't Christians. Or at least that was a perception I was raised with. And when I got into the military and I began to kind of explore the world, I was going to a lot of different places in the Coast Guard. I ended up being on a 270. I was on the forward as a non-rate, went to A school, which is like military training school for whatever your rating was. Went to that in California, came back, was on another 270, the Bear, and I did that for 3.5 years, and then had a small stint at a repair shop before I got out. And in that time frame, I spent a lot of time traveling. We were basically 2 months in, 2 months out, going around the world. Spent most of the time, though, down in the Caribbean. Majority of the time down in the Caribbean. And off the coast of things like Colombia and Panama. And we were doing a lot of drug interdiction down there. But the point of bringing this up is the fact that I was getting the chance to meet people from different cultures and different lifestyles from all over the world, different countries. It's just this melting pot, this cultural melting pot, the military, of just all these different views and beliefs. And I felt my Christianity I felt like it was just a lie. Like I was indoctrinated that, I believed Christianity because I was raised in a Christian household, but if I was raised somewhere else, I wouldn't have been a Christian. And so I had all these objections coming up, and no strong ground to stand on to kind of battle the objections I had. So as those objections were convenient for the lifestyle that I wanted to live at the time frame, and honestly, I had felt like Christianity was just a worldview that people had chosen because they liked the idea of having an afterlife, I kind of shrugged it off and let it all go. And then over time, as I began to really dive into my new lifestyle of being basically agnostic, I really began to grow that resentment I had towards Christianity as in general, because I felt like the whole movement was just a bunch of hypocrites, from the ones I had met, from the ones I was raised around. And ultimately, it just made me pretty much hate Christianity. And at that point in time, I adopted atheism. Now, over time, atheism was good for me. It served the purposes that I wanted, which was to give me a free pass to be whatever I wanted to be and be my own God, ultimately. And it kind of began to reach a crossroad when I was with my fiance at the time, and she did not believe in any kind of formal worldview, I would say. She kind of just had this free-floating belief that we reincarnated, but it wasn't really Buddhism or Hinduism. It was kind of this hodgepodge of a bunch of different things. And now that I had my belief system and my worldviews kind of clashing with another human being's, the further we went into that relationship, the more that became a central piece of what our relationship was and was not. And I found that being raised in a Christian household, there were a lot of values I had that didn't jive well with someone from that background. And I did everything I could to try to be open-minded as to why I didn't like these values or why I did like these values. And ultimately found that it left this huge gap in my belief that I was happy. The whole time in the military, I had just been so busy going from point A to point B, point A to point B, and just lonely, that I wanted to be around anyone that I could. But as I began to kind of mature into a man, I found that I was a little more comfortable with going against the grain and thinking for myself and not just taking what people gave me. And when that kind of came to begin to bud, if you will, I really had a hard time being with someone that I felt didn't have the same values that I did. Now, I didn't know why I had those values or why I cared, and I honestly wanted to get rid of them. I enjoyed my lifestyle of being with my fiance, drinking, and doing whatever I wanted. I was my own arbiter for goodness. And I originally had a really hard issue with being okay with that, because I'm such a person that needs to know why I feel the way I do, and needs to know why I think what I think, that it wasn't okay with me to just simply kind of borrow some of these ideas from Christianity while maintaining this kind of atheistic, leaning onto an agnostic position at this point. And so I decided to become kind of like a deist of, I felt like God had made the world, but he had just left it alone. And that explained the evil of life was just so complicated that I just thought there was no way that you could have such a fine-tuned universe. And I didn't know about the fine-tuning argument at the time, but I didn't think you could have such a fine-tuned universe, and it just had been an accident. I just couldn't buy into that. The science I did know of, the biology and all that, it just seemed like it was leaning way too much on chance. And so I began to look into apologetics, and I remember being on YouTube, and this video of Frank Turek from Cross-Examined popped up on my YouTube, and it was answering something like the question of evil or something along those lines. I don't remember specifically. I remember just watching this YouTube video and then consuming video after video after video after video. And I began to become, I was exposed to apologetics for the first time, and I didn't know that's what it was at the time. I just knew that I was interested in the answers that these men were providing. And these were questions I had had my whole life. And I mean, for no other reason than I was curious to know, well, how would you defend evil, or how would you defend this, or how would you defend the age of the universe, or any of these ideas. And I was really shocked with how coherent these answers were. I mean, it wasn't this. It was these scientific based calculations, and the evidence was coming from physicists and astrophysicists and biologists and all these different scientific methods. All these different scientists were coming out, and just, some were saying that they didn't know that the universe had this appearance that it was designed, but, and there's a lot of different arguments for that. But we're talking about, surface level looking at this stuff. Occam's razor says the simplest answer is most likely the correct one. And so with that, I was kind of looking at it from, okay, these guys have coherent and rational answers. What do the opposing views of this have? And so that's when I began to look into, Richard Dawkins is obviously one of the more popular guys of the time, but Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens, Matt Dillahunty. Yes, I would put Matt Dillahunty on that level. He has that much influence over the YouTube sphere, and a lot of us are coming to YouTube to learn these days. And so, and quite a few others, a lot of different other atheist views. And I really felt like those views were not as based in science as they like to say that they were. They like to tout themselves as scientifically based, but when it came down to them getting kind of cornered by these Christian apologists, the answers they were providing almost seemed like they were trying to skirt out of this corner with an answer that was kind of dodging the question. Christopher Hitchens was excellent at this. So is Matt Dillahunty, by the way. I enjoy both their styles of debate. I really like how those guys go at Christian apologists. I think we need that. We need those conversations. We need people kind of probing at the faith, making us uncomfortable, because that pushes us to do better in terms of understanding our own worldview. And so kind of as I began to see both sides of this equation and who was where, I started to lean towards Christianity. And as C.S. Lewis puts it, it wasn't like I don't have this come to Jesus moment in my life where, I had a dream and he came to me. It wasn't like that. It was more of I was dreaming and I woke from this dream. And I'm not quite sure when I woke up, but I just know that I became awake and then slowly more aware and more aware and more aware, until the point where I was wide awake. And I had no interest in going back to sleep. I had kind of been going through this journey of investigating these worldviews and the evidence for these worldviews. And this was after I was with his fiance, mind you. I had already kind of had that moment, and we ended up breaking up. But as I began to work into apologetics, it began to transform how I viewed Christianity, how I viewed the Bible, how I viewed everything, honestly, everything. I mean, space, science, you name it. I mean, it's affected by that. And that's ultimately what a worldview does, is it begins to be this lens in which we see the world. And I just really craved more understanding. I wanted to know more. And so that's when I began to buy the books that these guys wrote, and started reading them, and really felt compelled by the information that was presented there, that this apologetics, I just felt it needed to get out to the people. But one of the things that I had struggled with was, from a layman or just a person who didn't know deep philosophical arguments, I'm coming into apologetics and I very much enjoy it, but there was a lot of it I didn't get. And so this kind of inspired me to create Pondering Christianity. Was as I became a student of apologetics on my own study, I found that these answers were not always coherent in the way that they were being explained to someone who doesn't have a serious scholastic background or scholarly background. It was kind of like this ivory tower argumentation going on. And so that's what kind of inspired me to want to continue to look into apologetics and bring this information down to a level that's consumable by the masses. And I really enjoy that. I really enjoy talking to people. I really enjoy helping them understand an argument, because I enjoy when someone does that for me. There are people much, much smarter than me. I know it's a huge shocker, right? It helps everybody when you just take the time and patience to break the argument down into terms that they understand so that they can participate. And I feel passionate about apologetics for the same reason that probably anyone feels passionate about apologetics. It helped me realize that Christianity is the true worldview. Now, that discussion is something everybody wants to have, I find. Everybody wants to talk about religion. Everybody wants to talk about worldviews and how they think it should go. And it doesn't always have to be Christianity, but people do like talking about worldviews. Like, they want to talk about where morality comes from, what's right or what's wrong. Are you pro-choice? Are you pro-life? Are you going to vote this way, vote that way? Do you believe in an afterlife? All of these pressing questions begin to kind of get into our conversations. And so apologetics just pulled me in because I enjoyed people. I enjoyed these hard questions. And I really do enjoy a bit of confrontation. I'm not going to lie. And so it just pulled me into all these right areas, and really felt apologetics hit home. And just more Christians I speak to, the more I find many people just don't know about apologetics. And they just have this blind faith, if you will, about it. And it's frustrating for an atheist to debate a Christian that way, because it's like, and the Christian wants to attack the atheist and then get mad if the atheist has this blind faith position of, oh, well, you just believe that there is no God, and therefore that's a bad position. Well, there's a lot of Christians who are that way. And so I feel like we should all hold each other to a higher standard to get to know our worldviews and understand them in a more intimate way. Now, I'm not saying we all have to be world-class philosophers, but I am saying that we do need to take time to build that foundation. That's ultimately what led me into apologetics. That's what really helped me come back to Christianity. Like I said, it wasn't a come to Jesus moment for me. It was slowly over time, the arguments became very, very convincing, to the point where I was like, maybe Christianity is true. Okay, Christianity seems true. Okay, Christianity is probably true. And then Christianity is true now for me. And I hope for you too. And if not, let's have that conversation. That's a conversation you should be having. As C.S. Lewis puts it, if God is in fact real, it is the most important question in the universe to figure out. So with that being said, let me get to the big announcement, guys. So as you've seen, the channel has been growing dramatically. That's been fantastic. I want to thank God for that. That's been amazing. But thank you to you guys as well for coming in and showing your support for the channel. But ultimately, there is some cool stuff that I'm working on for the channel. I am building a merchandise line called Pondering Christian. It is designed to be the intellectual side of style. I feel like a lot of Christian merchandise is either poorly done or very in your face. And I'm really looking to create something that I think people would just gravitate towards and love, and it'll create conversations that can enable you to talk more about Christianity, or as a skeptic, have conversations related to the Christian worldview, or any worldview for that matter, and discuss them all in pursuit of truth, because I hope that that's what we're all after, is pursuing truth. So that's the massive announcement. Big merchandise line coming. I will do a launch video at 1,000 subscribers. When we hit that 1,000 subscriber mark, I'm going to do a launch video for the merchandise line and explain to you guys the designs, what was thinking behind the designs, and why you should pick yours up. And that's going to be your primary way of supporting the channel. And so I'll talk more about that when I launch the clothing line, why I chose to go in that direction, why I want to continue to go into that direction. Merchandise line coming at 1,000 subscribers. If you're new here and you like today's video, hit that like button. We got lots more content just like it. If you can also hit that subscribe button, that would be a massive help to me. And if you enjoyed this, check out more videos like this on the channel. And in the meantime, keep on pondering.